an accompanist. He's also a pianist, plays all kinds of music from many nations, and has traveled many nations playing their particular kind of music.
Seamus is one of the most embarrassing people to introduce you because he goes on and on. I'm gonna just play two airs, two slower tunes, one on the flute and one on the piano. The first one is called Anreve tu Egan Garrick, which means were you there at the rock? It apparently was the Irish way, Gaelic way of saying were you at church on Sunday, when actually the Catholic Church was outlawed and people used to meet in fields and the rock was the altar. So this is an air by that name, and then I'll do one on the piano. Slow one, I regret, but it's a tune that I love. It's called A Meal Without Food. It's one of those puzzles. This will be on the piano.
Thank you, Peter. When Deirdre Goulding competed in the World Championship, she danced what is known in the Gaelic language as An Rinke Lehalach, which is a set dance, a competitive dance that was taught by the old dancing masters in Ireland when they travelled from village to village teaching. And it's a very, very difficult dance. In the English language it's called a set dance, Rinke being the Gaelic word for dance and Lehalach being the Gaelic word for set aside or set apart. And they're set aside because the dances are difficult and because the dances themselves were composed, the music to the dances was composed by the old harpers and pipers that lived in Ireland in the 1600s and 1700s. And another reason why they're set aside is because the amount of measures in the tune are different. They're not square like the jigs and reels, like you might have 8 measures in one part and 8 measures in another part, whereas the set dances you may have 16 and 10, so it sort of varies. So we'd like to bring on stage to do for you one of the dances that she danced in competition when she won the championship. Miss Deirdre Goulding to dance the 3 Sea Captains for you. Back for a bow, our world champion Deirdre Goulding. cheer for her.
Thanks very much. I guess you really are a captive audience with the doors on the pews here. I guess I'll start with a little civics lesson. I guess I'm inspired by the presence of the presidents here in this building. The exercise of religious freedom is something that we really have as a very basic right in this country, but that was often not the case in Ireland. And I'd like to open with a slow air called An Raibh an Carrick. It's a love song in the Irish language, and it translates roughly as, have you been to Carrick, town, and have you seen my true love there? But the word Carrick in Irish also means rock, and when the practice of Catholicism was outlawed in Ireland, people used to meet in secret at flat rocks in the woods that served as altars to celebrate Mass. So it's one of a huge number of Irish songs that's considered to be allegorical. It has this sort of veiled second meaning. And Raibh an Carrick, and then I'll go into a tune called Gallagher's Frolics. Thanks very much. The next piece I'd like to play is a slow air that was collected in the Highlands of Scotland and published in a collection of airs from the Highlands of Scotland in 1794. The man who collected it, Patrick MacDonald, was very interested in the ancient Scottish harp tradition, which was in large part the same ancient tradition enjoyed by Ireland, because Scotland and Ireland are geographically very close, and people regularly traveled by boat back and forth, including the harpers. Patrick MacDonald expressed in the introduction to the book that he felt that this particular piece probably had been a fragment of an earlier harp piece. It has a kind of an interesting title. It's, I guess, by an early insomniac. It was called "Though I Go to My Bed, I Get Little Sleep." I think it's actually quite restful, but I guess next I'll try a few hornpipes. The first is usually a dance. It's referred to as a set dance. It's called the Blackbird. And it's a very, very old tune. It was around at least as early as 1803, when it was noted by an eminent collector of Irish tunes named Edward Bunting. It exists in the hornpipe form, which I'm about to play, also as a slow air, as a march, just about every tempo. And the term the Blackbird is another one of those allegorical phrases in Ireland. It has a lot of political significance. Sometimes it refers to Ireland itself. And in the case of this particular melody, it probably goes back to Jacobite times and referred to Bonnie Prince Charlie. And then I'll play a tune called The Fort of Kincora. The Fort of Kincora was the seat of government of the High King of Ireland, Brian Boru, in the 11th century. Thank you. The next piece that I'm going to play is a tune by Ireland's most famous traveling harper composer. He's a gentleman named Turlough O'Carolan. He was born in 1670 and died in 1738 when John Adams here was 3 years old. And he made his living by traveling from great house to great house through Ireland. He would come and stay for several weeks, and in exchange for room and board, he would entertain the families of the aristocracy. He's quite an unusual figure. in terms of Irish music. By the time he studied the harp, which he learned to play at the age of 18 after he was blinded by smallpox, there really was no longer an ancient Irish harp tradition. However, he did pick up the few fragments that were remaining. He was very influenced by the folk music, which you've been hearing today, and he was also influenced quite strongly by the classical music of the period. Dublin was quite a cosmopolitan place, and Italian composers from the continent did show up there. A lot of his pieces kind of bring together classical influences, folk music, and what was left of ancient harp music, so he is quite unique. The next piece I'm going to play is called A Carolyn's Draft, and it's his tribute to drink, although if you listen to it, it has quite a classical flavor. I'm going to invite Seamus, Laurel, and Peter to come out and accompany me. If they're ready.
And now I would like to invite Jimmy Noonan back again to play one more tune.
And his mother was a Deary, as my husband John Deary, their first cousin. The first time Brian came to Quincy, he was so excited because he was always anxious to see our historical spots. And while my husband and I went out to work, he went around and saw them all. So when we called and asked if he'd mind if we showed his paintings, he was absolutely delighted to think that people in this wonderful Church of the Presidents would be looking at the earliest Irish history, which is what these are based on, the paintings of the time. And it's from Ireland's first epic. You'll see it goes from about the 1st century to the 5th, and it's queens and kings and brave warriors, love. There are even the first Irish art is shown as stone carvings. If you'll notice the heads, there's something like them in some of the paintings in the back. Well, we hope you enjoy Brian Ferran's paintings, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to help. Thank you.